We are starting the second block, a very interesting one. And the Czech lawmakers will probably find it to be a difficult discussion because not all of them will agree that PET bottles and cans should be part of a deposit scheme in the Czech Republic. So now I will ask Kamila Chubanova to ask all the members of the audience to come back, and I will ask the panelists to join me here at the panel table. So I would like to invite a representative of our partner, Coca-Cola, Madam Jana Bartová, Public and Regulatory Affairs Manager, and then Petr Novotný, the Head of Consulting Department of the Circular Economy Institute, and Mr. Krzysztof Kruliš, who is the chair of the Committee of Consumer Forum. And we have only glass here, no PET bottles. We only have water carafes. And I will start gently with you, and then I may have some more critical or more intense questions for you, because I'm really interested in this. But let's have a look at it from a more positive perspective for the start. Do you think that the amendment will be passed? So, what is your opinion? I do believe that the Parliament will pass the amendment because it's a good thing for us. Mr. Kruliš, I think it will because I see many reasons why it is a good thing, but also I know that many representatives of the authorized companies, I'm speaking of Ecocom, say that we're lacking behind in terms of recycling cans. This might actually be a good incentive to start using the deposit scheme for PET bottles as well as for the cans. And so I think it's not going to be a discussion about whether we should do it, but how. So hopefully we'll have time to discuss this today. Mr. Novotný, are you also an optimist? I think there's no other option for us than to implement the deposit scheme, but we really have to do a lot of work informing or providing the lawmakers proper information to persuade them. And it's probably not just about the lawmakers, but also about the public, because at first there was some pushback against recycling. And I think that the Czech citizens are really very responsible in terms of recycling according to the numbers. So I think this should not be such a big problem in this respect. But is this about really consumers wanting this or businesses wanting this? Is there any survey, any research that would indicate whether consumers want this system? Well, yes, we have data available, and the initiative for deposit schemes that associates the largest beverage producers like Coca-Cola, Heineken, Matoni, has commissioned a survey like this, and the outcome is that the Czechs are very positive about this. They want this deposit scheme, and historically they've been returning the beer bottles, recycling the beer bottles. So the will and the intention is there. And we also asked about littering in the nature, which is one of the main benefits. And we see this also on an example from Slovakia. We know that people are worried or troubled by this. I live in Smíchov, and very often I find many beer cans on the windowsills. And also the capital city of Prague is really in favor of the deposit scheme. And I think the deposit scheme could really help us prevent littering. And people in the Czech Republic are interested in this deposit scheme, but of course it has to be comfortable for them. But this is part of any innovation. It has to make sense from the economical perspective. It has to be comfortable for the users, and it has to be conscious of the nature.
Před sebou jedno z největších.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Krulish, if you should talk to a very skeptical person and you should try to convince them why the deposit return scheme for PET bottles and cans should be introduced, how would you convince such a person? What arguments would you make? Well, I would rather have a debate with such a person. I would like to ask him first to tell me why he is refusing this system. Because I believe there are several relevant views, be it a view of the drink producers or consumers or us, or those companies active in the field of waste disposal or municipalities. They are also responsible for the municipal waste management. And then you have companies who put the processed waste back into circulation. So there are different stakeholders, there are different views we have to look at. And all of these stakeholders have relevant comments. So I suggest we do not polarize this debate. I suggest we accept and consider all these relevant views when we want to have a system that will be efficient and that will really work. If I should make some arguments and convince somebody, I would say that this scheme can have lots of benefits. If you set up the system right, it will combine the principles of freedom and responsibility. That is, we do not want to be restrictive and ban, for instance, what we did in case of single-use products or single-use straws that many consumers still consider quite controversial, because these were decisions taken by someone else. And we are prohibited to use certain products. So, with this deposit return scheme, you still have some freedom to decide, but at the same time, it motivates you to do the right thing. It reinforces your responsibility, and it avoids the extreme solutions such as a complete ban or prohibition. So it's up to your personal decision right now whether you want to recycle waste or not, but right now there is no financial incentive for you to do it, which means that it's not that motivating for the vast majority of the population. Thank you. Now, when you speak about freedom, I've been thinking many people argue then regulation and rules mean a limit to personal choice. Now, if this system really is introduced in the Czech Republic, and I will be that skeptical person convinced I don't want to do it, so can we keep this dual system? If I do not want to use this scheme, what I am going to do with that waste if I will not be that person who wants to do this recycling? Well, the system of yellow waste bins will continue. It will be used for non-deposit bottles and cans. So, for instance, those people who refuse to use the scheme because maybe they have a supermarket really far away, they can continue with the current system. So you can continue putting it in the yellow bins, or you can leave it on the side of the bin. So it should not undermine the current system. It should give you your freedom. So those people who refuse to change their behavior, they continue to do what they do right now. Yes, let me confirm this is the case. because PET bottles are not the vast majority of the waste that is put into those yellow bins. So the yellow bins will continue to be used. Thank you. Now, back to Mr. Novotny. You are from the Institute of Circular Economy. These deposit schemes, is that one of the main ways of promoting circular economy? And maybe a different question, how does that fit with the principle of circular economy? What is this going to do for the Czech Republic? Does this mean improvement of the environment only, or can we also calculate it in financial terms, in terms of money? Let's say that I'm a completely non-expert person. Can you explain to me in very simple terms what this is going to mean for our economy? Yes, I will try to explain. The concept of circular economy means that you try to use materials as efficiently as possible. In other words, to keep them running, to keep them circulating within the economy. That means you eliminate the generation of waste, and at the same time you eliminate the necessity to have more primary materials. So what we have right now, we have this voluntary system, which means that consumers, when they consume a certain drink, they have this packaging which they put into the waste disposal system. So the packaging becomes a waste, and in this way lots of material is lost. For cans, 3/4 of cans are lost. They go to black dustbins. And for PET bottles, it's 1/4 of these that is lost within the system. And then when you put them into the yellow dustbin, the PET bottles into the yellow dustbin, not all of these get recycled. Then there is another problem, that the system is open. So this packaging is mixed with other types of waste, and it is contaminated in this way. So as a result of that, the material we receive through the system is not pure, it's not clean, and we cannot use it again to put food or drinks in it. So the circularity is not really achieved. However, the system which is proposed right now by the Ministry of Environment means that you would not get this material as a waste, but it will be just this circulation of material with producer and consumer. There will be the deposit return scheme. That means that the waste material or the packaging material will go back into the system. It will not be mixed with other types of waste, and as a result of that, you will be able to reuse it for another production of packaging. And with the new system, over 90% of the material will remain in the system. It will go back in the system. Now, let me also mention another important factor in terms of motivation. This will be not only motivating for the consumers, but it will be also motivating for the producers, because producers will try to produce packaging material in such a way that it is recycled more easily. So this will be like another incentive for the promotion of circular economy. And I believe in this way the deposit return scheme should help reuse not only these reusable bottles, but other types of material as well. But we will speak about that later maybe. Yes, I would like to add something. In terms of EU regulation, the main idea of EU lawmakers was that the material should be used again. And this reuse of material doesn't mean that you turn this material into waste. Now, in the Czech Republic, 80% of PET bottles are collected. However, only some 47% of these are then reused for other purposes, which is a very low figure. Now, I'm sure you've heard discussions about the safety of this recycled material, but now the European institutions are setting more strict rules for the quality and safety of recycled material. And with this new scheme, you will have greater possibilities to check the safety of this recycled material. And these producers will need to have certain certification for that. So when you become a part of this scheme, that means there will be the certificate necessary for you to prove that you can reuse this material for food or drink production purposes. So this is something you do not hear that often. However, in my opinion, there will be a significant economic impact as well. Okay, thank you. Now, before I give the floor to the audience, I would like to hear more about the experience in Slovakia, because, of course, Coca-Cola is very active in the Czech Republic as well as in Slovakia. You work as a single entity. And in Slovakia, they already introduced this scheme. So what is the experience with the scheme in terms of carbon footprint reduction, cooperation with supply chains? How did this help to Slovakia? Well, now I must say I do not have the exact information yet about the carbon footprint. However, I must say that results in Slovakia exceeded our corporate expectations, because more people started returning these packages in Slovakia than we expected. As you may know, the system in Slovakia was introduced very quickly. There was not much time for preparation. However, in the second year of this return scheme, they reached some 90% already. 90% of packaging is returned. So you can see that it works. The system works. In terms of carbon footprint, I'm afraid I do not have the exact data yet. I can't give you the answer. Would you like to add something? I believe they made some calculations and it showed that we can generate 20% of savings in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. Yes, but it's also very helpful for municipalities, because these PET bottles do not end up in black dustbins, but they go into the return schemes. I did some calculations for the Czech Republic, and PET bottles amount to 600,000 black dustbins. This would be some 3,000 full garbage collector vehicles. So this can mean great savings for our municipalities as well. Now, when you combine it with the recycling of material, savings are even greater, but we will talk about that later, I believe. Okay, now I have a technical comment, or practical comment. Are we supposed to see a presentation as well? Yes. So you have prepared a PowerPoint for us? Yes, but that's no problem, because the discussion is very interesting. So shall we look at the presentation, or is there something you would like to mention? Okay, so shall we start from the beginning again? Thank you. So, what do we have here? Now, the first slide I was planning to show to you is this one. And that is the use of material in terms of plastic bottles and in terms of cans. Right now, the figures are quite low. We collect 80% of plastic bottles, but we only use 47% of these. As to the collection of cans, there the figures are quite low, so we do not even mention that now. Let's move on. I will try to be quick. So, what we have here is the willingness of Czech consumers to collect the waste. Several surveys were carried out. We asked the people whether they are worried about littering, whether they believe that deposit schemes could help. And here you can see very positive figures. Now, of course, we are not the only ones doing the research like this. The Ministry of Environment performed such research as well. They got slightly lower figures, but still it is obvious that the Czech citizens really are very much in favor of the introduction of this system. Now, efficient combat against littering. Slovakia is a very close country to the Czech Republic, so we can assume that the results will be very similar. In Slovakia, the number of PET bottles and cans dropped significantly. With the introduction of the deposit scheme, the amount of cans and PET bottles in littering dropped to really low figures, 2.2% and 3.2%. Now, here you can see some information about the carbon footprint, the difference between virgin PET bottles and virgin cans. When you compare them to recycled ones, is quite low. For cans, the difference is up to 97%, while for PET bottles it is up to 80%. So 80% lower carbon footprint when you produce these bottles from recycled material. Now, of course, there are supporters as well as opponents to the system. So far, we've heard lots of comments or concerns coming from municipalities. We were trying to show to them that this could be very helpful to them, be it cleaner environment, cleaner nature, or lower budgets, lower costs for the budgets, because there will be lower costs for cleaning of public spaces or significant savings in terms of collection costs. Now, small traders show some concerns as well. However, we are trying to show to them that if you buy, you can. If you sell, you can also buy. So there's no reason why this should be negative for small traders. For instance, in Slovakia, we saw that this was actually quite beneficial for small shops, for small traders. Let's move on. Here you can see an overview of the situation in Europe. This may be slightly outdated, but I believe the information here is quite recent. So recently the system was introduced in Romania. Now it's also planned to be introduced in Austria. And talking about deposit return schemes, I really refer to traditional deposit return schemes. So here you can see an overview of what happened in Slovakia, how people in Slovakia became used to this system, and you can see that the figures are very high, that the collection rates are really, really high. Now, here we asked people in the Czech Republic why they think this system, what will be the benefits of the system. So basically they said high environmental protection and financial incentives as well. Here you can see an overview of the DRS in practice. So what will it look like? The producer is going to make a certain product in the returnable packaging. They will inform the administrator of the deposit scheme about the type of packaging, size of packaging. Then it will go to the seller who will sell it to the consumer. They will get a deposit from the consumer. When the consumer consumes the product, they return the packaging and get the deposit back. So then the seller needs to store the packaging temporarily, then they give it back to the administrator, and the administrator either sells it back to the producer or at the free market. That will depend. As to the administrator of the deposit scheme, they will be funded mainly by producers. So that means they have to pay for the registration of bottles and cans. So there will be payments and deposits. Now, of course, sellers will also have slightly elevated costs. So they will receive the deposit and they will also be paid this, what is referred to as the handling fee. Handling fee should cover the costs related to the operation of the deposit scheme. As to the income from this material to the administrator, that will be their only income for them. So the cost at which the material is purchased, it has to be a fair price. It has to be a market price. It's not that the producers will get the material for free. Certainly not. It has to be very realistic, fair price to keep the system going.
Here on this slide, there's a very brief overview what the current legislation defines as packaging that should become part of the new DRS system. So it's PET packaging, aluminium packaging, and you know that not all manufacturers will have the obligation to be part of this deposit system. For example, if you have farmers market and someone selling on a farmers market. Also, milk bottles will not be included in the system, and we can confirm that milk bottles have never been part of the scheme right from the beginning in any of the countries. I think that Croatia are starting to include the milk bottles. Scandinavian countries are thinking about it starting next year, but it's not a standard, really. So I think this may be the end of my presentation, actually. Thank you very much, Mr. Krulish, from the perspective of a consumer. And we discussed this before the meeting, and in our household, we have several plastic bottles. Some of them can be returned, some of them I'm not sure if they can be returned. So will there not be chaos in the system once it's implemented? So every bottle I have at home, I'll be able to take back to the store and it will work smoothly. Well, I'm afraid the system is a little more complicated in reality than what we've seen. One of the biggest disadvantages of the model that we're implementing now is that it's going to be rolled out nationwide. And although there has been an input from the European Union, the European Union actually asks the member states to have the DRS system implemented in the individual countries. It will work, the system will work all right on the internal market because the producers will be able to take it across the borders of the EU countries. But then if consumers buy the product, they will only be able to return the packaging in the country where they bought the product. So we know that in many Czechs go to Germany to do their shopping, so they cross the border because things may be cheaper there, including the deposit, and then they bring it back home. But unfortunately, they will not be able to return the packaging. We know that in this case, this will not work. So if a lorry driver buys a drink in a PET bottle, then they will either have to return it in Germany or just keep it in Czechia. And we know that if there's a lorry driver traveling across Europe, he may have like 5 different boxes in the car for the beverage packaging purchased in individual countries. So this is an advantage of the system. And for me, as a person with a PhD in European law, someone who used to teach European integration, for me there's a question mark, because I think this may actually be disputable, as there is a kind of barrier for the European consumers. The material, because the consumer actually can cross the borders. The consumer can purchase the goods anywhere, and if people are used to traveling to Germany, Austria, and bringing the products back, then they will need to understand what is the proper procedure for the individual packaging. So they will have to be aware of the system in which they bought the product. So they will have to be aware of the fact that there is a deposit for the packaging, but it has to be returned within a certain system. So it would help a lot if the labels were really clear for the consumers to understand, and there should also be some guidelines for the consumers. Madam Bartová, so if we're talking about bottles that we buy in here in the Czech Republic, for example, in a mini market, and I buy 4 different beverages and a can with a beverage, and will I be able to return all these packagings in here, or will I have to analyze them first to know whether I can return it? Well, if we have a specific label, barcode, then you should be able to return the packaging unless the mini market did their shopping in Germany, because sometimes they do their shopping in Germany, they bring it to Czechia and sell it in Czechia. And I have had some previous discussions with Kofola, and we know that for the Czech and Slovak market, there may be a possibility of using and returning the packaging in these 2 countries, but this is not an option that would be guaranteed, and unfortunately this will not be the main practice across European countries. The draft law is quite specific about the labeling, and you are right about the cross-border shopping. Right now it's impossible to return packaging of the products that you bought in Germany, but as you can see, the DRS system are being developed. They are being rolled out in individual countries until 2035. They should be adopted in all the European countries, and once they are up and running, perhaps there may be a follow-up discussion whether there should be a common deposit policy. But right now it's easier, even politically, to roll the schemes out on the national basis rather than developing or designing a European system that might not be fully functional. But it's something that may still happen in the future. Now, back to your question. In this case, it will depend on individual member states. PPDR sets the obligation for the products that are sold, but most countries in their legislation stipulate that it does not matter what kind of product you buy, specific product, but anything that is part of the deposit system should be returned. There should be an option to return it. Thank you. And please remember to use the microphone again for your question. Good morning. Thank you for the presentation and for the discussion. Since in Slovakia the system has been implemented some time ago, what was the problem in the Czech Republic? Have there been political obstacles or other obstacles to implementing this scheme? Thank you for the question. The DRS system implementation in Slovakia was really from top to bottom. The minister decided, I want this system be implemented within 1 year. And they did not really have too much space for discussion about it. They had to focus on the practical aspects to make it work. And that's why I say that some people who are not so much in favor of this scheme say, look how difficult it was in Slovakia. Yes, but they were in a different situation. In the Czech Republic, the initiative comes from the manufacturers, from the bottom. We are trying to persuade individual stakeholders that this is a scheme for the future that makes sense. And I must say that the ministry was really fair in the discussions, in the political discussions. They try to listen to all the stakeholders, and the outcome of this effort is the draft legislation or the draft amendment. So we assume that the ministry is in favor of implementing the DRS, but there were really many things happening. That's why it has taken so much time. On the other hand, this has given us time to really fine-tune the system to make sure that all the players within the scheme scheme will find it a win-win solution. So hopefully we will not see any surprising moments or situations in the future. I would like to add that the Czech Republic, in terms of sorting the PET waste, the Czech Republic really has very huge numbers in this respect. The situation was not like this in Slovakia. So now, when we're trying to make the system even more efficient, of course, it needed some time, because we were right now we're actually lagging behind in recycling the aluminum cans. And we know that some of the principles are even more important with aluminium, and the sustainability within this cycle is actually even higher, because you use the aluminium waste to produce more new packagings. But we know that aluminium also requires a lot of energy to process, and many aluminium processing companies are leaving Europe. Actually, they're closing their plants here because it's very demanding from the perspective of energy. And if you use the recycled cans, aluminium cans, as the new material, it may be a little more challenging as well. But from the environmental perspective, from the perspective of littering, we know there are some initiatives that say that aluminium cans are the most frequently found litter in the nature. So it's a really practical solution, because if you have a can, you cannot close it again, you cannot reuse it really. Sometimes you don't even finish the content. So if you take it out for a trip in the nature, then it's more difficult to bring it back home and recycle it properly. So that's why people also find it more often in the nature as litter. So this is the type of material that our results were not really good in the Czech Republic. And I think that it really makes sense to have the DRS for aluminium cans. Well, let me ask one more question then. There was this public discussion and many critical voices. So could the delay have been caused by all these stakeholders speaking up? Because we know that the waste processors are not very much in favor of this scheme, because their business may shrink since there will not be so much waste they prefer in the recycling bins. So are you trying to involve the waste processors in the discussions as well? Were they not the hindering aspect? Well, yes, of course, the ministry invited everyone really, from product manufacturers to resellers or retailers to waste processors. But I would like to say something here. The DRS system very positively affects something that we call eco-modulation. So the producers that were using plastic packagings, non-recyclable, are now trying to understand that it may be better for them to start using recyclable materials, and this actually increases the volume of waste that will be recycled, but because we know that whatever is in the yellow bin belongs to the waste processing companies. So they will be able to get the material from other products that will be good quality material for them, because manufacturers are switching to the use of the plastic materials that can be recycled. And we know that the waste processing sector says we're losing the most valuable part of the waste, but this is not right. We know that this eco-modulation aspect increased in other countries after they implemented the DRS scheme. And I would like to add that in Slovakia we see that there were less PET bottles in the yellow bins, and people actually started to sort more of the plastic waste, because in the past they might have found it difficult to find space for it in the yellow bins, so they would just use black bins. So the fact that some of the PET or that the PET bottles will not be recycled in the yellow bins will make space for other plastic waste to be properly recycled.
Okay, so now are there any more questions from the audience? We need a microphone to hear the question. Thank you. My name is David Vozbecký. I'm a journalist, and I have the following question. From what I've heard, it seems to be a problem that the PET bottles are made of different types of material and different colors. So will it be necessary to make greater harmonization of these bottles? Because let me explain what happens. It's not that you reuse the same bottle. You have to destroy the bottle and put it all together in another material. Okay, yes, so let me explain. This is not a problem for returning of the bottle, but later on, it is necessary to sort out the bottles. So you need to have a special sorting center, which is what they already have in Slovakia, where they sort out the bottles according to different types of material and different colors. So yes, it is more difficult, but in terms of unification, this was discussed also in PPVR. But in the end, this was refused because it could result in other problems such as forgery and other issues. So right now, it is not foreseen to unify all PET bottles into a single model. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Pavel Stern, please. A mic. Yes, I have a question. Speaking about feasibility of the system, it was also discussed at the Swedish embassy, Norwegian embassy, and we've heard that between Sweden and Norway, the two systems work together, that you can return the bottles from one country in another. So can you comment a little bit about on the connection of different systems? And then second question on digital deposit schemes. Okay, so I will start with the second question. I consider the digital scheme a Loch Ness monster. Everybody speaks about it. We have seen some blurred pictures, but when you get to a certain place, you find nothing. Okay, so digital scheme is something that you people speak about a lot. However, so far, there has been the only official study carried out in the UK, in the United Kingdom. It was done in 3 cities. However, in practice, it doesn't work anywhere yet. So you cannot find a system. So yes, it sounds nice. However, the implementation would be very, very difficult. Also, because how would you get this from people who do not make much effort? Now, I think the traditional system is always related, physically related to a particular bottle or to a particular can, which you have to bring somewhere, put somewhere. However, with the digital system, you would be using a code. You would be using something that you scan, and you get a deposit for using the code, even though you throw it into the nature. So, in my opinion, yes, it sounds nice, it sounds comfortable for consumers. However, when you look at it from the practical point of view, for instance, the administration of databases. So, you would be using a QR code. That means that your account number or your credit card would have to be included somewhere in the system, because it wouldn't operate with cash, but it would operate digitally. That means there would have to be this huge database including all the data, saying that you returned that particular bottle in a certain city. Let's say in the Czech Republic we could do it, but imagine in another country, less sophisticated country, what risk this would pose. For instance, let's say there would be the village, Lukavec, you would see that lots of bottles are being returned there. And then suddenly, as a result of that, that village would get a reputation for having the highest consumption of beer. So, digital deposit return scheme, in my opinion, is not feasible. It's not realistic. I don't say it can never happen, but right now I do not see it. I don't foresee it. Yes, how about you, Mr. Novotny? Do you also see the digital system as a Loch Ness monster? Yes, so let me explain better. Right now, there is this idea that you would have, okay, right now you have a yellow bin, and next to this you would have another special bin where you open your app on your mobile phone, you would scan the code from the dustbin and you would insert your bottles or cans in the system. However, in this particular case, you wouldn't have a closed system. So that means anybody else can come to that special bin, open it, take out the bottles from there, take out the cans from there, and use it again. So also these bottles from the digital scheme cannot be used for recycling because there's a risk of contamination. And also, it would be very user unfriendly, because imagine you would have to bring a big bag of bottles and scan every single bottle. So just imagine how this would work in real life. So this hasn't been applied anywhere properly, and I do not think right now this is the way to go. The digital scheme, it could be possible maybe for some other products that are much fewer of them, not billions of products, but much fewer places and products, and it would have to be checked, let's say, by a camera. So people couldn't cheat, they couldn't reuse those products. So I don't think the digital scheme is a way to go for beverage packaging. Yes, just imagine what this would mean for manufacturers. Every single bottle, every single can would have a unique code. So imagine that in the manufacturing line where we produce dozens of bottles within a minute, and if the system gets stuck, that would be really damaging for your production. I remember in Prazdroj, they tested out something like that, but it didn't work. So this is certainly not friendly for the manufacturers, and it is certainly not friendly for the consumers and for the nature either. Okay, thank you. Maybe before we give you an opportunity to ask one last question, Mr. Kruliš, you wanted to add something? Yes, I wanted to speak about this example of Norway and Sweden and permeability of their two systems. So, how could we do it in the Czech Republic? Let's just realize that in the Czech Republic we have Czech crowns. We do not have euro. So we would also have to take into account the conversion rates. That's not possible to do it right now. But yes, it could be done. It's possible to connect the systems, but with a barcode on the packaging you could connect it and But I still hope one day we will have the euro as well. Hopefully, we will live to that day. Thank you. Is one last question, ladies and gentlemen? I just wanted to say one thing. We have to think about small producers, small companies, but I'm just trying to imagine, let's say I have a small store, I have a small deli, and I have all these people coming, bringing the packaging to me. So do you take the situation of these small companies, small traders into account? Well, I'm a little bit concerned here. I think there can be different interests. Yes, small traders may want to use the scheme because they may feel this will attract other consumers, other shoppers. But it depends how it would work, whether they would just purchase it from the consumers and they will have to transport it somewhere else. So will they work as a reception point, or will they just provide a certain service for someone else? There could be different models foreseen, but it will depend on our consumers. Now, let me mention this public opinion surveys. First, there was the question, are you in favor of the scheme? And most people said yes. And then there was the second question, and that was, where would you like to return these packaging? And the vast majority of people said it should be done only by large supermarkets with 250 square meters and more. But then there was a group of consumers who said that every shop, even those small shops, should be able to become involved in the scheme. So this public opinion survey was in favor of that, but then it would depend on the methodology. So I think we have a certain indication proving that our consumers want to do it. They want to do it this way. And then let me add one more thing. The Czech Republic has lots of municipalities with small amount of citizens. We have lots of villages with less than 500 people. So for us, the situation is slightly different than in Germany. We have lots of villages without any stores at all, without any shops at all. So now, let's just think about the situation. You will have people commuting to work not by their own car, but by bus. And what are they going to do with all this returnable packaging? They do the shopping, and then they take their shopping with them by bus into that small village. And if you want to make them bring all that packaging back, that would mean that they would have to carry a huge bag of returnable packaging with them by bus. So maybe it would be useful to have an automatic machine in every single village that would enable people to return packaging anywhere, so that those people living in small villages do not have all this trouble affecting even the transport infrastructure in the rural areas. Yes, that's interesting. Thank you. You wanted to make another comment? Yes. I've been thinking about the system and how to make it more fair, because right now the costs for the system are covered by manufacturers and those purchasing returnable bottles. So they have to transfer that package, all these packages, somewhere else. But right now, the costs are covered by municipalities. So in a way, even those citizens who never buy any PET bottles, who only drink water from the tap, they have to pay for the system in a certain way through the taxes. So let's say in the future, we would like to have a more fair system, that only those people consuming it would contribute. So the system should be more fair. Thank you. That was a nice final comment, I believe. So let's hope that all these stakeholders will have the same feeling that we want to have a fair system. Thank you. So I would like to thank our three panelists for this very interesting discussion at the UP panel, namely Jana Bartová, Petr Novotný and Krzysztof Kruliš. Thank you very much.